Hello, everyone. Aurier Red as Nottingham Forest secure their first 3 points of the season against Sheffield United. We'll discuss the 2-1 win at the City Ground, look ahead to Man United away, and the impending arrival of World Cup winner Gonzalo Montiel in the company of, first of all, broadcaster and Reds fan Darren Fletcher. Fletch, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Are we going to confirm at this point that I am only a stand-in? I was a late shout. Somebody dropped out from being an important part of the podcast to somebody's not coming. Can you? Let's get it out there nice and early this morning.
I was going to say a public shaming inside 40 seconds. I mean, it was supposed to be Lewis who was at the game and he couldn't do it. So I turned to Fletch in my hour of need and he was there for me to give me abuse.
I was there. I abused you for a few minutes and then agreed to come on. So that's fine.
Exactly. So I got what I deserved. We're very grateful to you for being here. 2 other guests on location today. First of all, Michael Temple. Temps, are you well?
I'm a late call-up as well, mate. I'll take you on. I think Charlie Slater and Gary Birtles are asked as well. So me and Fletch can't even get on the subs bench. We're in the bomb squad, mate.
Disgraceful, Temps. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. I feel like we should be training on the other pitch. We should be on the other pitch.
Start our own podcast.
Would you get any under 23s? And finally is with us is Emily Anderson. Emily, good morning. Congratulations on your engagement, as we said before we started recording. Are you well?
Thank you. Yeah, really good, thanks. And by the way, guys, I was first name on the team sheet today, so I wasn't a super sub.
So
I'm the Yatesy of the team.
Original list. I love that.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I'm really good. I'm actually talking to you from sunny Wales. So, I'm camping with kids and a dog. So imagine how that's going.
Yeah, precursor to married life. There we go.
Exactly. It's my first test.
Temps, you might have to leave us early, so because of your tea time. So we'll let you kick us off. What did you make of it overall on Friday?
I agree with what's been said already. I don't think I'm going to be surprised too many people by saying we should and could have killed the game first half. I think our pattern was there for all to see. We made all of the running, and several players stood out for me. I thought it was a bit of a canter. They had a spell, as every team does, and unfortunately they scored during that, and we let them back at it a bit, start the second half. But right result in the end for me. I was particularly impressed with Taiwo. You can see how central a player of his type is to this side. And Chris Wood ably came off the bench and made a telling contribution. So, yeah, work-ons for sure. Really, really positive first half. There was a wobble, but that's always going to happen, but got the right result for me.
I think, Fletch, I made 2 kind of errors of judgment leading into the game. Firstly, I think I underestimated how much Sheffield United would just make it a battle. So now having seen them now, I don't think they're going to stay up because I don't think they're going to score enough goals. But I don't think they're going to get battered too many times because they'll run themselves into the ground all the time. And secondly, I wonder if every fan expected to win, and maybe it translates to the Forest players that they knew they probably had to win this game with the fixtures around them. And it did make it a little bit nervy in the middle portion of the game. Was that kind of to be expected that Forest weren't going to win at a canter in the end?
I don't think Forest tend to win at a canter because they find it hard to score more than 1 goal. And I think that still remains the challenge. You know, they've got to be a team that can play weaker teams than them. And when they are playing well, that has to be leading to more than 1 goal. I thought when they scored early, it might be the night where they go and get 2 or 3, kill it off early. Everybody can relax and enjoy it. But it doesn't tend to work that way with this team for whatever reason. I don't think it's a lack of desire to do it. It just doesn't seem to work very often. I was on the radio on Friday, but saw the game as well. But I just think Sheffield United, if any team in the league will be galvanised by who they are and what they're going through, it's them with their management team. To lose and die, to lose Berger, that will just make them more determined. They're the kind of group that when you put their backs to the walls, they'll come out fighting. That will carry them so far. But I think then the issue comes that is there the quality within the team to turn fight and desire and ambition into wins? And I think the answer is probably no in the circumstances. My worry was I thought they had 20 minutes in the second half where what they did worked really well and Forest hit a flat spot. And they're the kind of situations where a game can get away from you. But I was delighted for Chris Wood to get the goal. It was a difficult header as well, by the way. That's not a difficult finish. And I totally agree with the point that Temps makes. And we spoke about this really early on the podcast at the start of last season. And I think it's been a fantastic coaching job on Taiwo Awoniyi because all of a sudden the subtle bits of Taiwo's game, the little bit of movement at Arsenal, the way he came across Ben White. That's top-class centre-forward play. That's a really bright, intelligent footballer. And there were bits of movement the other night as well where you go, that's a player that's really in tune with himself on the pitch. And we know all about his physical attributes, size, strength, speed, desire. He's a fantastic finisher. But we're seeing that intelligence as a centre-forward developing all the time. Subtle movements, the ability to get open against Premier League centre-backs. And he just gets better and better. The combination of his willingness to learn and ability, allied with the coaching staff working with him on a daily basis, he's developing into a very, very good Premier League centre-forward. 15 goals has to be the requirement. And if he carries on like this, 20 is not the beyond the realms of possibility. And then at that stage, this is all provided he stays fit, but then at that stage, you have a very good Premier League centre-forward. And I think it's congratulations all round that he's developed to this point over this first year in English football. It's been great to see.
The strikers were pivotal to the game, Emily, as Fletch rightly says. That's a nice mug, Fletch. As he rightly says, Taiwo, I mean, he's developed so far from the player we saw in the first home game last season against West Ham. He's scoring goals. He took that one that was offside really well. And Chris Wood as well, you know, much maligned, and including by us in terms of can he start games, but coming off the bench and scoring a header of that quality, it's encouraging. Do you think Forest still need another striker this summer?
I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, yes. And, you know, we can see from other teams that are struggling to find a striker that can actually score goals. Even some of the top 6 teams are struggling at the moment. So to see not only Taiwo going on that run of scoring 8 in 6, Chris Wood coming off the bench, and he's had an awful lot of flack. And I've always stuck up for him because in those moments when we need him, actually, he's done the business. He scored the equaliser against Man City last season. And I have to say, when he came off the bench against Sheffield United, you wouldn't have given him hope. But like Fletch said, it wasn't an easy header. But he did the business, didn't he? And for me, with this game, I didn't go in complacent. I wasn't confident we were going to win the game. You've all taken the mickey out of me that I had the surprise prediction that I think Sheffield United might sneak out of it. And it's because they are that dogged team that will not give up. And you saw that against us. Had Matt Turner not made that save in the second half, we'd have seen ourselves 2-1 down. And I couldn't see us turning around that deficit if we'd have gone 2-1 down in that game. And I think this time last year, we'd have probably lost against the equivalent of Sheffield United, whether it would have been a Bournemouth or a Fulham, which we did do last year, didn't we? So for me, I came out of that game thinking that wasn't very pretty. It wasn't a joy to watch, but we've got those 3 points. And I think this time, I'm comparing it to our first year in the Prem, and I just think we've improved. We've done the business. So I'm happy with it. You know, not a pretty game. Sheffield United do not give up easily. So to come away with 3 points, I'm delighted, and particularly delighted for Chris Wood. Because I think for Taiwo and for him, it's all about confidence, isn't it? Because they'll know, Chris Wood particularly will know that he's been getting flack off the fans, and Taiwo obviously was out with an injury, but he just seems to be so full of confidence at the moment, and I just hope it continues. Not too much though, so that some of the big clubs don't stick around him. But yeah, I just think that I'm so pleased for him. I really am, because he comes across as such a nice guy as well.
Yeah. I mean, Wood he did look lean, and he looked sharper to me, which was good to see. Fletch, Emily makes a good point there about Bournemouth and Fulham at home. There were shades of it last year. Maybe Turner doesn't make that save, and he gets a bit ugly if that goes in. Is it a sign of Forest making progress, not so much in terms of quality, but in terms of mentality to get these wins over the line in games they probably should win at home?
I think it's confidence as well in your ability as a Premier League group, Premier League player on an individual basis. But you can lean on the experience and know that you belong in the division based on the fact you stayed in it last season. It's why I always say that I think you can judge a team as a Premier League team when they've survived the season. You can start to judge players as Premier League players when they've gone through a season and get a second one, because you can get promoted and not be a Premier League team and not be a Premier League player and just fizzle out and get relegated. We've seen it. But I think you're seeing players now that belong in the division they're in. They know how to navigate their way around the division they're in. And I just think that it's a team that's just got better, hasn't it? You know, there was almost like an epiphany last year that they realised who they were and what they are and how they need to go about it. And let's do what we're good at. And they do what they're good at now. You know, they're relatively solid defensively. They're organised. They've got round pegs in round holes. They know they want to counter-attack, whether they're at home or away. we're starting to see. I thought going back to the Arsenal game the week before was quite refreshing. Certainly the last 15 minutes, that they were starting to get more players forward in attacks. I thought too often last season we saw them attack with 2 or 3 at the most, and it makes it hard to score. But now you're starting to see 5 or 6 red shirts in the penalty area, sometimes more than that. And I just think this is a natural progression of a team that had to find itself, a manager that had to work out how he was going to go about it. And now you're starting to see the fruits of that labour last year. And, you know, I just think they're a good, solid Premier League team now. I don't think they're a relegation worry. I think they're fine. And I just think they'll have the wherewithal, that moral fibre, that little bit of belief and confidence to get through situations like you saw on Friday and come out the other side, which is just a sign of progress.
Yeah, I do think watching a few other teams this time last year, we were not at the level of a lot of teams, but now I watch Everton, Wolves, Sheffield United. Haven't seen much of Luton and Burnley yet because they've only played 1 game, but there's enough teams for me to be comfortable that we're better than. At this stage, it's only 2 games. It's very early. Almost 500 people.
Just one point, Matt. You know, last year, I don't know whether people agree, I thought for Forest to win, they pretty much needed the 11 to be at a level. And I think they're at the stage now where they can have an off night and win. And I thought Friday, you've got 1 or 2 players that just went through periods where you're thinking not that effective, but the other ones around them could cover it off. And I think that's essential because you're not always going to get all 11 playing to get your results. I think you've got to be able to carry 2 or 3 on occasions and be able to work it out. And I thought Friday was a prime example of that. Players that we might have expected a little bit more from, who didn't quite get there. I thought Morgan struggled, particularly second half. I thought Danilo struggled pretty much all the way through the game. But last year, that on occasions, that would have been too much for them. And that would have been a weakness in the team that they couldn't cover. But now they're able to get through that and come out the other side. And what I would say is, because we get asked about him every time we do anything about Ryan Yates, I thought his introduction on Friday changed the way the game was played. I was really surprised he didn't start, because if ever you're going to start Ryan Yates, is against Sheffield United. But I thought when he came on, that was the click of the gear again from us being under pressure and looking like we were going to concede the goal to lose, to then getting that belief back in the middle of the pitch that we'd go on and win the match. And I thought he was essential to Forest finishing the game strongly and getting the win.
And also, don't you think that this year as well, for the first time this year, we've got subs that improve our 11? So when Alanga and Yatesy came on, Sheffield United couldn't compete with that. And that was almost for me like, that is your welcome to the Premier League. We've had that year of struggling and not having not having the subs we'd necessarily want on the bench, but to have the likes of Alanga on the bench and come on with that pace, and Yates, as you mentioned, who I was surprised didn't start. I think that's what sets us apart on Friday, because as the Sheffield United defenders were tiring, we could bring on the likes of Anthony Alanga, who's just full of pace. So I think that's where we've improved as well, is having those subs that can really make a difference. So I don't think we necessarily had that last year.
And they were bringing on kids that, no offense to them, I've never heard of a few that they were bringing on. I think that was a big difference. 500 people watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. It'd be very much appreciated. And we'll come on to Yates and a few other players Fletcher mentioned there, who I don't think were quite at it, but the subs made a huge difference. I just want to talk about Serge Aurier, Temps, 2 assists, 2 lovely crosses. But I've put in my notes here, was he that good defensively? It was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde performance, I thought. Fletcher, I can see, is twitching already. What did you make of him, Temps?
Well, he's assisted 2 goals with really good crosses. I was pretty pinpoint for the first one, between 2 centre-halves. Taiwo bullied his man, great finish. The second cross, to Fletcher's point, was actually a bit behind Chris Wood. He had to adjust and do a lot of work with the one-touch finish there to find that corner. So, the first cross was the one for me that was a touch of class, probably a little bit misguided with the second one. The profile of the lad we're going to come on to talk about from Argentina, from the clips I'm seeing, looks very progressive, looks like he can get up and down. I know he spent a lot of time at right back at Sevilla, but it appears that he's coming to put pressure on Serge Aurier. Will he, won't he go to Saudi? Money talks, and he's at a stage of his career where it's now or never for that type of move. He did okay for me, Serge, and I'm really, really comfortable with him being first pick down the right-hand side in a 4 or a 5. He's clearly better off in a back 4. And the challenge with the team selection now is the tip of the arrow is pretty much sorted if everyone's fit and available. Morgan Gibbs-White, Taiwo Awoniyi, Brennan Johnson, triple threat, very, very different players, but have started to complement each other well and understand the run. So if you play a back five, it has to be 3 into 2 in centre mid. And yet she was very, very unlucky to miss out. That was the kind of performance which gets him back in the side against Man U for me. I thought he was truly excellent. Mixed reviews on Serge. I know he's been bagged a little bit, but he had 2 key moments in the game. He assisted both goals. He is a willing runner. Yes, he goes running from his post every now and again, but in that system, to create an overload against a weaker team with a back five, you have to be prepared to take managed risk, and I thought he did that pretty effectively. So I'm probably a bit more positive about Serge's performance than certain others.
Yeah, I wasn't down on it. There was that spell, and Fletch, you can come in on this because you probably don't agree with me. There was that spell at the start of the second half where the lad down the left for Sheffield United was caught. The ex-Liverpool player, forgive me, I forgot his name, was causing us a lot of problems, and I was questioning whether Serge can play as a wing back as effectively as a right back. Is that symptomatic of the team struggling then, you think? And it wasn't as much Serge struggling for that 15 minutes. It was more of a collective failings, Fletch.
I think you've got to think about the Serge Aurier profile, or Serge Beckham, as we should have called him after Friday, because Temps talked about the 2 crosses that led to goals. There were other fantastic balls in that didn't lead to goals. His crossing on Friday was of a very high standard. I watched him a lot when he was at Paris Saint-Germain. And his forte was sticking the ball onto Edinson Cavani's head and they would score. Now, when he was at Paris Saint-Germain, the Achilles heel of Serge Aurier was as a defender. When he was at Tottenham, the Achilles heel of Serge Aurier was as a defender. And he was also a player that made mistakes. Serge Aurier last season had a very un-Serge Aurier season, that he didn't make mistakes, very disciplined, excellent defensively. But that's not been the career profile. You're going to get good delivery from Serge Aurier. You're going to get the odd mistake from Serge Aurier. And you're going to get the odd moment where you think defensively he's been liable for whatever situations occurred. But that is just the profile of the player. I agree with you. I think there'll be a tendency this year that they might want to try and find a way to play him as a right-sided centre-half on occasions, because I don't think that they see him at the stage of the career that he's at of being that up-and-down, constant wing-back threat down the right. I think it's why they're trying to strengthen the positions in the manner that they are. So I agree with that. But I think what we've got to think about is that Serge had a near perfect season defensively last year in terms of not making mistakes. But the career profile would tell you that this is who he is and this is what he does. And he's the kind of player where you have to take the rough with the smooth sometimes. But when you get the end product that you had on Friday and he generates 2 goals and might have generated more, you can accept that as a team. So this is the balance. And by the way, what I'd say too, if you look around the Premier League, the wing backs that don't have frailty are the ones that are regarded as the elite in the division. But there are lots of players that play that position that defensively on occasions will be caught out just based on the nature of it. So I don't think he's on his own.
Yeah, that's inherent risk, isn't it, Fletch? That's the point.
Is.
Wing back has to abandon his post to be effective in an offensive manner.
True. Emily, what do you make of Montiel incoming? He's obviously best known for that penalty in the World Cup final, and he's scored a winning penalty in a Europa League final as well. Obviously got a very strong mentality as a player by the sound of it. What do you make of it if he does sign?
Well, I guess, does that mean that Serge is possibly going if we sign him? Because he'll come in as a right back, is he?
Or as Fletch says, Serge could play right centre back. But there's the Saudi interest certainly.
I don't know enough about him to have huge opinions, but I guess on paper he looks great if he scored the winning penalty for Argentina and for Sevilla in the Europa League final. I'm one of these people, I trust the process. So it sounds like a cliche, but if Steve Cooper's happy with him and wants to sign him, they must see something in him. Is it 10 million we're looking at for him? Or is it a loan move with an obligation to buy, I think?
That's both been reported,
Any strength and depth we can get, I'm here for it. But I would rather stick with Serge. A bit like Fletch, I'm a big Serge fan, and I think for all his faults, his positives outweigh that. And I feel really comfortable when I see his name on the team sheet, just for his experience. And yeah, he makes the odd mistake, but I don't know. I just think you always get a great service from him. So I'm not overly excited by this new signing, but I guess I've got to trust the process. Fletch, you probably know more than me with your European expertise.
I actually watched him on Wednesday night because he came on in the Super Cup against Manchester City, and Price scored his penalty in the shootout, which he seems pretty good at. So he played 5 games at the World Cup. It wasn't as if he just came on and scored the winning pen. He was a part of that group. The problem he has in Seville is that he plays behind Jesus Navas, who played his 655th match for the club the other night. And even though he's 37, I think if they remove Navas from the squad, the stadium falls down. He's that much part of what they do. So I think Montiel is a victim of who he's behind. Must be like backing up Stuart Pearce back in the day. You were never going to get past Stuart until Stuart said, it's your turn. But I think he played 5 games. He never really lets Sevilla down. He's a World Cup winner. So the pedigree is there. I think we can dissect stuff like this until we're blue in the face. But if you're a team that's in the second year in the Premier League and looking to try and get towards mid-table, and you're signing a fella that played 5 games in the World Cup and came on for the whole of extra time, by the way, in the final, came on at the end of 90 minutes and played half an hour, and he's won a World Cup, he has to be of a certain standard. So I wouldn't worry too much about him. My concern would be, how's he going to get on with the Brazilian boys? You can't beat Argentina and Brazil. We've got Argentina and Brazil. Did somebody say yesterday that he's going to be the first Argentine that Forest have had?
We had
Gino Padula.
Yeah, and Claudio Jacob as well. So he'd be the third.
So the first good
Argentine.
Slightly better CVs, yeah.
And is he? I don't know this. Would he be the first World Cup winner?
Oh, good question.
That's a quiz question.
I know Claudio Jacob didn't win that.
I'd imagine so. That's a good question.
Yeah. Look, it's a buzz, isn't it? All of a sudden, our club that was signing some bloody awful footballers for about 2 decades, and now signing the fella that's won the World Cup and scored the winning pen, and we're saying, is he any good? He's just won the World Cup. Let's enjoy it. Get him in. He'll look great in the away kit. That'll be great for him as well. We've got the old wobbly Argentina stripes. Everybody can get behind him. And I tell you what, I think the fan base really enjoy our South American players. I think he's brilliant. I think he comes with a pedigree. He's won a World Cup. He's at Seville. By the way, if you're signed by Monchi at Seville as well, who's gone to Aston Villa, he's probably the best evaluator of talent in the whole of European football and has been for an extended period. So if he's going into the market in Argentina and bringing him over, that is often a really good indicator of how good he is. And also, I think you're going to see the other one at Aston Villa. Acuna from the other side is going to go to Villa, the left back. Another one of Monchi's players, Monchi now at Villa. So that Seville team starting to break up. Bono, the goalkeeper, played in the Super Cup and then went to Saudi Arabia the following day. I think the Aurier thing's interesting. And I think if players want to go to Saudi Arabia, it's really difficult for the clubs to stop them because of the opportunities that are over there. So I just don't think there's a great deal that clubs can do at the minute when that transfer opportunity comes about. So if it is an opportunity for him, and I don't know that it is, but if it is, I'd be really surprised if he didn't go. That would probably shock me at the stage Serge is at in his career.
True. And I've said it on here repeatedly. It's a real bugbear of mine that the Saudi window closes on September the 20th, because that is going to cause havoc for a few clubs. And that should.
Did you just see, by the way, the breaking news? Ben Foster's retired from professional football. That's what 4 in the first half against Swindon does to everybody.
No, I did not see that.
They're going in hand over fist. He's jacked it in. So there'll be no more body cam in League 2. There you go. Breaking news. We'll break some news for you on the Gareth Body Red podcast.
2 other players who haven't won the World Cup that I want to talk about, Temps, and McKenna and Worrell. So much chat online about them being lumped in together on Friday, as a lot of people saying they were both rubbish. I didn't see it that way personally. I thought McKenna didn't have a good game. I thought his passing was off. His decision-making was off. He gave a chance away almost in successive minutes in the first half. And it was actually Worrell who bailed him out once. To me, Joe's been tagged with this having a poor game because there was that terrible error where they ran into each other, and they'll probably blame each other for it. What did you make of the pair? Do you think that they were both bad, or was one better than the other?
Well, McKenna's not supposed to be playing, is he? He's the understudy, and you've got Felipe and Niakate to come back in. And if they were fit, McKenna would be nowhere near that starting 11. I did think they would plump for a back four, and McKenna would be the one that came out to allow, in this instance, Yatesy to play and us to have a bit more of an attacking look from the off. So, no, McKenna doesn't get anywhere near my best Forest team anymore. To Fletcher's point, we signed him at a point when he was the best available player. He wins his headers and tackles in the Championship, and he rarely lets you down at that level. I think he lacks the pace. We've seen several instances where he's struggled with the ball in behind, which isn't Willy Bolly's strength either. Willy Bolly is not particularly good when the ball's played down the channel or over him making his recovery run. So Joe Worrell ends up having to be the legs in that particular three. But no, I think McKenna will be eased out when those two boys get back to fitness. Niakate's clearly there or thereabouts, ready to start against Man United. So, yeah, I'd separate the two. I think Joe was covering some deficiencies in the two guys that he found himself with in the three. McKenna is not a Premier League starter, but he's decent backup when you've got injuries to Felipe and Niakate.
We've talked about Joe to death, Fletch. He just makes an error again that the fans seem to latch onto. I think he's a good defender, and he seems to have developed this tag to me that's a little bit unfair.
I'm not necessarily going to speak about the two individuals because they walked off in a winning team, conceded one goal in the Premier League. So if they'd have walked off and they'd lost 4-1 and the centre backs had had a stinker, I get the conversation. There are many, many teams in the Premier League where you would look at areas of the team and say it could be stronger. And the centre backs for Forest right now could be stronger simply because two of the players that would start aren't available, or the manager doesn't deem Niakate fit enough at the moment to start matches. Felipe's not been on the grass yet with his knee, and we don't know what the season's going to look like for him at the age he's at. Whether he's going to come back and be serviceable, we don't know. I think that's why they're in the transfer market at the moment, trying to buy a centre-back of some repute. So I think you're always going to drill down on individuals. There are easy targets within a team. We know who the easy targets are within the Forest team. I thought there were weaker players on the pitch on Friday than what we've just talked about. People may disagree with that, but I think players, if they are ultra consistent over 38 league matches, are probably international footballers. And the reason why they're not is because there are frailties to the games that they've got to deal with on occasions. And there are lots of players within this Forest team that would fit that bill. Hence why they're playing at our club and not playing at Manchester City and others. So I think we can talk about individuals who get targeted until we're blue in the face. The facts of the matter are the club is in the Premier League for the second season. The transfer window isn't closed. And this is a process over the coming transfer windows to make the team gradually better, to eliminate the inconsistencies, to get stronger in every area. And as you do that, you climb the league and you eventually potentially become a European team. This is very early in the piece. Lots of players have got holes in what they do. And you could find something wrong with pretty much everybody in the team if that's what you wanted to do. And we're not the only club within the division that you would do that. So I think to keep digging individuals out, I just think it's a bit of a selfless argument because, of course, that's the case. Of course, they've gone from the Championship to the Premier League and had 2.5 transfer windows, and they've been out the top division for decades. So it takes time before you look at it. I remember a time when Man City was signing players, signed a centre-back called Mangala for about 42 million quid. He had shocker after shocker after shocker after shocker, and eventually they went and signed other centre-backs. And look at them now. Teams progress. But this is not a fact that these players are, or whatever. They're who they are. I just, if we're going to finish in the bottom 7 or the bottom 8, you're going to have areas of your team that you could get stronger. And I just think it's a process that has to happen now over the fullness of time, and the players will gradually get better over the course. But I think they picked Joe out. I mean, I just don't really get that. I don't get that. I don't get that.
The other player who was picked out, I'm going to jump ahead on what I wanted to about. It's this weird notion online that Brennan isn't asked because Chelsea are in for him or Spurs are in for him. I mean, Emily, I would I watched the game. I didn't see that at all. I thought it was a very typical Brennan performance. Some stuff came off, some stuff didn't. But I thought the commitment was certainly there. He doesn't look like his head's been turned at all, does it?
No, and I think, number one, he's a professional footballer, and we can see he's a professional, and he takes his role at Forest really seriously. And actually, he helped set up the first goal, didn't he? He had to run across the pitch to parry it back to Aurier. And from what I could see, he worked just as hard as he ever does. And, we know he's a consummate professional. Why on earth would he change how he plays because he may or may not be going to another bigger club? And, as we know with a lot of these players, he's currently our star boy, and the agents are working their magic to make him a high profile player that wants to go elsewhere. But at the moment, he's still a Forest player, and he knows that as well. And you could see that in him as he played on Friday. And I think like the likes of Joe Worrell as well, I think sometimes we have easy scapegoats. And at the moment, it seems to be Brennan and Joe. And I don't think it's fair, really. But for me, he was yes, he didn't score, and he wasn't firing on all cylinders, but it wasn't for want of trying. I think the effort was there.
It was a similar sort of thing for me, Temps, with Gibbs-White. Statistically, he had a really good game in terms of chance creation and passes into the box, but a lot of stuff didn't come off for him as well. To me, it's like a young player, slightly inconsistent. He wants to do it all, and maybe there's some lessons to learn for him in terms of keeping it simple sometimes. But young players are going to have games like this, aren't they, where it just doesn't come off?
We're building a side around Morgan Gibbs-White, and there were moments that he had in the first half that had the whole ground marvelling. Nice to be hated, isn't it? Sheffield United fans giving him stick as well. But he did his job for them, and they've obviously got pretty short memories there. But he faded, and luxury players will, because they're the ones that have to try things and take risks. So it's like the inverse of the discussion we've just had there. We want unspectacular performances from centre halves that we're not talking about afterwards, because we want them to win their headers, win their tackles, and find someone that can play. Morgan Gibbs-White's a different animal. He's trying to unlock defences. For the first time in a long time, we had a team that were camping in a little bit, trying to make themselves tough to break down. And he's the key to unlock that door by taking risks, trying to pop up between the lines, trying to make defense-splitting passes, trying to dribble. So there's more opportunity for him to make mistakes. I thought he found space really effectively. If you look at them trying to mark him, he was very, very clever and wandering around and popping up in all kinds of alleyways, some good touches on the turns. He's great in transition. I think him and Danilo are the keys when this game plan of counter-attacking fires in turning defence into attack quickly through carrying the ball and through progressive passes. So, yeah, Morgan Gibbs-White, I didn't quite get the hammer there either. He had a good first half. He tried things that didn't come off in the second half. He's inked in to start every game that he's available for, and will continue to build a team around him. Brennan, slightly different. He's not going to be in the game 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a Forest shirt because of the way that we play. So he's there because his pace is an absolute weapon to get at fullbacks, to draw defenders when we break. And that's why teams are looking at him. There's this stat, isn't there, about him having the most metres per carry on average. So Brennan Johnson in the Premier League last year, I think it was 23 metres per carry on average, the most progressive dribbler in the Premier League, in a team that was struggling in an attack that didn't score too many goals. So the reason that the top 6 scouts are sniffing in and around Brennan Johnson is they think pairing him with better players, more experienced players, international players, would make his game more effective. So we're blessed to have both of these players. My personal view is that Brennan probably will move on in this transfer window, but Morgan Gibbs-White's here to stay. We need to back him, get the best out of him, and build a team around him.
Does Danilo fit in the same sort of bracket, Fletch? He passed backwards a lot and on Friday. Is it just the thing, young player, a couple of his mates aren't in the team anymore, lacking a little bit of form very early in the season? Again, just something, it's going to happen, isn't it?
Look, how old is he? How many games has he played? He's
Exactly.
learning his trade. He's learning the Premier League. He's come from Brazil. He's learning a new way of life. He's living in a new city. I think what we got out of him at the back end of last season, how good he was surprising, because I thought it'd take him longer to settle. I know there are South Americans in the dressing room, but he's had a complete life change. And can you imagine how difficult it is to play in the Premier League compared to playing in the top division in Brazil. I would think the only comparable things are the pitch, the goals, and the ball. I would think everything else is pretty different. And he's come and slotted in, and this is going to be a process. He's got to learn how he translates his game from Brazil to the Premier League on a consistent basis as a young, inexperienced player. And he's dealing with life issues. He's dealing with a change of culture. He's dealing with a change of game. Everything's changed for that young man. And the fact he did so well at the back end of last season is a testament to him that he was able to do that. And I think we all just presume, and we've all been guilty of it, that you can pick a footballer up from one country and drop them in another and the football is the same. And it doesn't work that way. And if we changed jobs and went to live in a different country without our families, we would have a period where it probably take us a year before we settle into any kind of rhythm. But footballers are just expected to do it tomorrow. And if they don't, they're no good. And it doesn't work that way. He's a young man in a different world, playing a different brand of football in a different team with a different life. And we've just got to give him time to do it. And if we do, we're patient, we've got a really good player. If people start to criticise him at this point, it'll ruin him. And I just think it's so short-sighted to think that he's going to come in and look like the finished article at this stage. I'd just like to say something about Brennan as well, because it's starting to wind me up a lot. Because Brennan Johnson hasn't asked to leave Nottingham Forest. Brennan Johnson, when he came back for pre-season, was fully expecting to be a Forest player. He's not trying to get to Chelsea or trying to get to Tottenham or trying to get away because he's had his head turned. He hasn't. He's a young player at the moment, not knowing where he's going to be living, where he's going to be playing, what he's going to be doing. Now, that has to have an unsettling effect on anyone. That's not because he's down tools at Nottingham Forest because he wants to go to Chelsea. He's not decided this course of action. My understanding is that they've got to get inside financial fair play. So this is going to be the future of the club, the way it is, that they're going to have to wheel and deal. Players are going to have to be sold. Money's going to have to be generated so that they can make the club better. And Brennan Johnson has been identified as that player. Now, it's not his fault then that clubs like Chelsea are being linked with him. What he's trying to do while he's still here is give his best for the club. Because if somebody says to Brennan Johnson today, you can stay, I think he'd be quite happy to do that. Because this is not on him. So I think we've got to get the perspective of what this move is. This is a necessity, I think. And he's the one that's been told he's going to be you. So he's now waiting like everybody else, not knowing when he's going to go and where he's going to go. And he's what, 21, 22? Just bought a new house in Nottingham that he's planning on moving into and he's probably not going to now. Going to move away from his family, very close to them. There's a lot in that young man's mind at the moment. And people are saying he's down in tools because his head's been turned by Chelsea. Absolute nonsense. They are people that don't know him, have never spoken to him, have never been in his company, and don't know his makeup as a young man. And it's absolutely disgraceful if that's what people are saying about him at the moment. This is something that's beyond his control. And at the moment, he knows as much as this as we do. And at some stage, the decision will be taken. And if Chelsea want him, he'll go to Chelsea. Because everybody goes to Chelsea when Chelsea want you. But that's not on him. He's not gone into Steve Cooper's office and said, I want to leave Nottingham Forest. This has gone from the other side. And he is now part of the process that he didn't start. And people have to remember that and be fair to him. Because this is not his doing. This is not a Stan Collymore way back when I'm off because I'm better than this. That's not him. He'd stay here quite happily, play for this team this season and give his lot. But that's beyond his control. I think people need to think about that and respect it.
That's the podcast trailer sorted, Davies.
Someone says I've never seen Fletch so wind up. You need to.
Yeah, but do you know what? Do you know what? These are people, though. These are people. People. We're talking about a 21-year-old Brazilian lad, and we're talking about a young fella that's come through our academy, both in situations that are completely alien to them. And criticism is coming their way because of it from people who don't know them and don't speak to them and aren't around them. It's just unfair. And people need to be more sensible than that.
Temps, you've got a couple of minutes left, I think, before you have to abandon us. Just give us your take. Is Chelsea, from a footballing point of view, a good move for Brennan? Massive club, wouldn't begrudge him the move at all. He's going to get a pay rise. But I saw Sterling was great yesterday. They've got Madueke. They're going to have to play some experienced players in that team because they can't, they're going to have to play Sterling basically because they can't just have Silva. So is it a good move for Brennan at the right time, football-wise?
Yeah, I mean, massive period of transition at Chelsea, and people say if he went there, he'd go on the bench. I'm not necessarily sure that's the case, because they're, in a sense, where we were 12 months ago, shuffling the deck and trying to find combinations that work, because they haven't found it yet, looking at the manner in which they've been setting up for games. It's market forces, isn't it? The market is telling us that what Brennan's got is a rare commodity, and big clubs will pay good money for it. So of all the clubs that can afford the finance to get Brennan Johnson out of Forest, Chelsea is probably the most viable for him, because it's not a settled side. There's a new way of thinking down there, and he has that rare commodity of pace and poise. You could pull 2 highlight reels up for Brennan, depending on the type of player you're scouting: an out-and-out winger terrorising fullbacks, or someone making deft 2-touch, 1-touch finishes inside the box. With more ball, with a front-footed side, he would look very, very good, beyond the levels we're seeing him when he's playing for Wales or when he's playing for Forest. Like Fletch, I like the fact that we've got a backbone to this side that is born and bred in our academy. He's a big part of that. I'm not surprised other teams looking at him. And yeah, he will take no action until such time as Forest accepts a bid.
True. Right, the clock is ticking, and I just want to spend the last 10 minutes talking about Man United on Monday. Actually, Temps, before you go, I'll ask you this one, then I'll throw it to Emily. I feel like Forest have got a decent chance of getting something. I think, but to me, it's more prohibitive on what Man United do. I think we know what Forest will do. If United stick with this team and formation that they played the first 2 games, I feel like Forest have got a pretty solid chance of getting, something there. A point would be great to me. How are you feeling about the game?
We're playing them at a good time while they haven't got a focal point at number 9 for me. There's a lot of pressure going to be put on Hovland when he's fit and ready to go. But they seem like a team that's waiting for that centre forward to drop, to bring the best out of all the attacking midfielders that they've got, to bring the best out of Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, running in and around that number 9. But they haven't got it yet. So you're seeing a Man United team that could do with another 3 weeks of pre-season for me. So yes, decent time to play them. I think a point would be an excellent result. I said before, one job in August beat Sheffield United, one job in September beat Burnley. Point would be a bonus, and you're going to see a very similar setup to Arsenal, and hopefully us being slightly more effective, able to manage a shutout. Decent time to play them. They're not quite the force I thought they were going to be on the evidence of the Spurs game and the Wolves game, and we could provide a bit of an obstacle for them, I'm sure.
We shall let you go. Swing some golf clubs. Have a good round. Are you good at golf? Are you a modest man?
Not as good as I should be. We played pairs yesterday, so you can have a bad hole, can't you, and be forgiven. It's singles today, so we're having our little Ryder Cup session up here at Carden Park. So yeah, I better get on the range and get tuned in, because I'm not good enough not to. Right,
we'll let you go. Thanks for joining us. Maybe see you on Thursday for the preview. Right, Temps leaving us. Emily, how are you feeling about it? And are you making any changes to the team? I guess I'm thinking of Ryan Yates coming back in there.
Ryan Yates is always first on the team sheet for me, and I was really disappointed that he didn't feature in the starting lineup against Sheffield United, so definitely bring him in. A bit like Temps, I feel quite confident about Man United. I know last season we didn't do very well. Apologies, by the way, if you can hear banging in the background. The pool table in this pub I'm in is being fixed, so I've picked the perfect place to sit, haven't I? So sorry about that. I've watched both the Man United games so far. The Wolves game, they provided nothing and were very, very lucky to come out with a win. And equally, the Tottenham game as well. And looking at them, realistically, if we can get a point at Old Trafford, I will clearly take that. And they seem, like a lot of the teams so far this season, they're just not settling into their flow. But I guess that's the case early on, isn't it? And I feel like we don't go into that game scared. We set up probably the same way we did against Arsenal. Sit in, see if we can take them on the break and maybe nick something. But what we can't do, which we did early last season, is go gung-ho, be open and expansive and expect to get anything out of it. Elanga might be a good person, possibly, to be a focal point for that game, with obviously his links with Man United, and also the way he's sort of flourished as he's come on as sub in both games. Ideally would like to see Niakate probably back to replace McKenna. I know Felipe has actually said this morning he's even closer to fitness, obviously probably not for this weekend, but I think there's suggestion that he should be back fit soon. But yeah, I mean, if we can get a point out of them, it's a bonus, because for me, in my little notes of where we would be, this would be a definite loss. But looking at Man United in the first few games, they're certainly not firing on all cylinders yet, and Rashford's struggling to find form, isn't he? So I'm not as scared as I would have been maybe pre-season.
I thought Fletch, like Wolves prospered through aggressive runners through the middle in that game. Cunha and Nunez. Forest have got Elanga and Gibbs-White and Johnson, who sort of fit that mould. Like Emily said, Rashford to me is much better out wide than through the middle. Obviously a world-class player though. And we're getting a bit carried away thinking Forest can go there and get a point or not.
I think if they play like they played against Wolves, then Forest can. I mean, they had opportunities at Tottenham, made some mistakes. I think Roy Keane went off the deep end a little bit. I thought they had opportunities in the match. I think as well, what would surprise me is if Erik ten Hag picks the same team for a third match in a row, having played like that against Wolves and Tottenham, and he doesn't win, people will start to question him and his judgment. So I'd be very surprised if they don't make changes to the team for this weekend. And then it's difficult to assess what you're going to get. One thing that really impressed me at Arsenal was the organisation and how they went about it. And the game plan was there, that they were going to try and stick in the game until the last 10 minutes, and then they put players on that could try and change it. I don't think they're going to do anything different to that. I think when we think back to last season at Old Trafford, one or two individual errors cost them. They were defending okay. I think the beauty about Man United is when you play against Manchester City or Arsenal and they're on a going day, it can absolutely take you to the cleaners. Liverpool too. Once they get on that roll, they're insatiable, aren't they? You can't stop it. I don't necessarily get the impression that Manchester United are quite that, so I think you can contain them a little bit better. But let's not forget, they've got world-class players through the team, and if Forest do get something, it would be one of the best results of the season, even when you look back over 38 games. I think it'd be a great thing to do. I just think we've got to temper enthusiasm, because they will click at some stage. United, they're still contenders for the top four. They've got really, really good players. But yeah, if they're on a slightly less than going day and Forest can be disciplined and organised as they were at Arsenal, then why not?
Yeah, I think if United revert to Eriksen in midfield, Martial plays through the middle, Rashford plays out wide, I think we've got a long day. If they play the same team like Fletch says, I think it's foolish, but would give us a shot. Last topic I wanted to touch on, just quickly on the style of play, the debate around the way we're going about games, people questioning Cooper's tactics. I don't want to spend too long on it because I think it's a bit mental, but there's quite a few fans who are seeming to think we should be playing a lot better football than we are. We've played 2 games. We've given Arsenal a good run, and we've beaten a dogged Sheffield United team. I'm not seeing where this criticism's coming from, Emily, but it's interesting to address it. What do you think about it?
I think it's ridiculous. If you look at our pre-season, we were all really worried, weren't we? Where are the goals coming from? And we've got no cohesion. And then we narrowly missed out on a point at Arsenal, and we beat Sheffield United. Yes, it wasn't pretty, but we got those 3 points. I'm not sure what people are expecting 2 games into the Premier League. We're kind of doing everything that was expected of us. I remember you said before the Arsenal game, if we lose 3-0, that's a decent result. And we narrowly miss out at the Emirates. I think that we're learning from last season. We're not going out gung-ho, fully expansive, expecting to win games and then getting hammered 4 or 5-0. We're organised. We know where our strengths are. And at the moment, we've still got those injuries. We haven't got our best centre-backs at the moment, have we? And we're still trying to fit in those midfielders. Yatesy had to miss out the other night. So Personally, I think Cooper's getting it spot on with defensive and counter-attacking in the first half, and then depending where we're at half time, we go for it like we did against Arsenal in the second half. So I'm not sure what people are expecting Cooper and the team to do.
Yeah, I mean, Brighton's a shiny object, Fletch. We can't all be Brighton.
But they've got so many years on us in the Premier League, haven't they? It's a completely different argument. We are not Brighton at the moment, and we're nowhere near being Brighton, and it's ridiculous to think that we would be. It's our second year back in the Premier League, and we're currently sitting. We've got our first win after the second game at home.
Yeah, and
calm down, people.
Last summer we built a squad in 5 minutes with some hectic signings. We had a terrible injury record. I just don't want fans to. I don't know. You shouldn't try and lower expectations of fans, should you? I don't know what a word.
No, I'm not saying level expectations. I know what you're trying to say. But we've got to be realistic. We're not going from being promoted through the playoffs to surviving our first year in the Premier League to we need to go for top 10. We're still building, and even if we just improve by a place this year, that's building. I'm not sure what people expect us to be, but we are still the same team we were at the end of last season with a couple of additions, and we've got some injuries as well. So we're actually not far better off in terms of players we've got because of the players that are out injured. So our only real, I guess, addition is Elanga at the moment, isn't it? Because we lost Henderson and we've got Turner in.
Einer's injured.
Einer's injured and he came in for Loddy. So actually Elanga is our only addition at the moment. We're on the brink of losing Brennan. So actually I think we're doing all right.
Yeah. Any final words or anything to add on that, Fletch, before we depart?
I don't know why everybody's moaning. I can't work it out. Why are we suddenly a disgruntled fan base? We think 3 or 4 of the players are no good. We think one fella's down tools. We think the style of play is no good. Played 2 matches and got 3 points. Stayed up last year. Transfer windows open. I don't know why all of a sudden there's so much disgruntlement. What do people want to do then? Sack Steve Cooper to bring a manager in that plays a different way? Because this is the way that Steve's decided to play. What do you then say to players who are happy in a certain style? Well, you've now got to play a different way because people don't like it. So we might let 5 in a week because we're going to play 2 open because we want to be more entertaining. Tried that last year, by the way. 15 shots a game were raining in until people changed it. And there were certain people last season saying, well, we've got to be more defensive than this. Well, all right, now we've got to be more expansive than that. Well, we tried that. Didn't work. I just don't know why all of a sudden there is so much disgruntlement over individual players and the style of play. I don't know what people want or expect at this stage. I just don't understand it. I didn't know that. You surprised me today to tell me that this is now what seems to be a relatively unhappy fan base. I don't want to give too much. I don't know what percentage of it is. I don't want to give too much credence to it in case it's a really small minority. If it's a really small percentage, why are we even bother talking about it?
There is. I see it more in the comments on this podcast. I think the reason is I see it more in the comments on this podcast than at any point that we've done it since the Premier League. And I saw it more on Twitter. And I don't want to give too much credence to Twitter because there's so few people on Twitter. But it's more that it's in the comments on this podcast today, and especially last week. I think it's weird. Pat says, I think it's the low block. I mean, I hate the term low block. You can win any game playing any way. And I think Forest would have won that game more comfortably if players had played to their potential more than the tactics on Friday. We carried, like Fletch said, we carried a couple of players and we won. I don't think it was down to tactics. So I don't want to go overboard on it. I just thought it was something to discuss very briefly for the last 5 minutes of the podcast. I feel like we're ending on a low note when we shouldn't be because we've won and we've started the season well. And I'm quite optimistic going into Man U. Right. Anything you want to see, Fletch, in the final few days of the transfer window in case you're back on? Any desperate needs or wants for this team?
No, I think they've got everything. I think they've got most things under control. I think they've done a relatively good job in there. I don't really think they need any advice from me at this stage as to what they should do. I think they've got it all under control. I think if they start taking advice from the likes of me, they could be in a right mess. Just a word on, we mentioned Gonzalo Montiel. They're being linked with Nicolas Dominguez as well at Bologna. Yeah. That's been mentioned this morning. I had a quick conversation with James Horncastle today, who knows everything about Italian football. And I think Brighton have had a mention, Emily, haven't they, in dispatches about why we're not like them? Well, he's in the last year of his contract at Bologna. And when he was in Argentina, he was a player that Brighton wanted. So the people that like Brighton might be quite happy with that because they quite fancied Nicolas Dominguez. He's feisty, central midfielder, plays well in a 4-2-3-1, will improve the defensive side and give them a bit of meat in the middle of the pitch, which is nice. Last year of his contract at Bologna, so there's no reason why it wouldn't get done. So I think people who are wondering a little bit about Dominguez, that might just help in terms of a bit of background as to what he's all about and what he might bring. But yeah, that's it. And don't raise Brennan Johnson, Matt, in my company again.
I'll try not to. Any final words before we go, Emily?
Just want to say commiserations to the women in the World Cup yesterday, England women. I thought they've done us all proud. And as a woman who loves football and has loved it all my life, and a daughter who plays football, it means so much to me. And I just think, we need to keep banging the drum for women's football. Also, big thank you to the Penny Art Arms in Brunkrug, who've let me sit here for the last hour talking, and have even bought me a cappuccino. So I'm very happy.
Good on them, and commiserations to the women as well. It wasn't to be in the final, unfortunately. Spain deserved to win, so that's the way it goes. Right, if there's 660 people still watching, give us a like, do subscribe, spread the word, it all helps. Fletch, thank you very much for bailing me out and standing in. It's very much appreciated.
Off the bench this morning. It was a crisp one appearance.
It's a squad game.
Yeah.
No, hey, listen. No guarantees on this podcast. You know that.
Emily, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Very much appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Well, I think today's the last day, isn't it?
Yeah, go home today. I've left Nick to pack up the tent, so it's been well.
Good on him. What a man. Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for everyone who's watched, joined along. Lots of comments, very much appreciated. We're back on probably Thursday with a preview for the Man United game. A rare Saturday 3:00 kickoff, I think it is, at Old Trafford. So, no one's too excited about that game outside Nottingham by the sound of it. But I think we'll do well. So have a good few days and we shall see you soon.